Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Haley Ross, and today I'm going to be telling you about the issues faced by refugee children in the American school system. Refugee families come to the United States escaping horrible conditions. As stated by the UN Refugee Agency, a refugee is someone who is forced to flee their country because of war, violence, or religious persecution. Most likely, they cannot return home or are afraid to. Refugees come to the United States with the hope of bettering their life. One way to better their life is through education. However, the United States education system, refugees face discrimination and xenophobia, lack of teacher quality and training, and lack of resources. First, I'm going to talk to you about discrimination and xenophobia. In a report from the News and Features from the National Education Association, the report states that more than half of refugees are children under the age of 18, including a large number of unaccompanied minors. Urban refugees are forced to live in vulnerable situations and are subject to violence, discrimination, xenophobia, exploitation, sexual and gender-based violence, human trafficking, and forced reparations to their home countries. Xenophobia is defined as the fear and hatred of strangers and foreigners. Just like many students face in the American school system, refugees fall victim to bullying and discrimination. This discrimination can be modeled in different scenarios in schools. Common scenarios of this are reported by Professor Tendai Achube of the University of California in Los Angeles in his presentation on structural xenophobic discrimination against refugees. These include a refugee is denied admissions because of a school administrator explicitly stating anti-foreigner sentiments and as a basis of denial of admissions. A refugee is denied admissions because he or she does not obtain the proper transcripts or documentation, which is an issue because families cannot contact their home country to obtain these documents because that would risk invalidating their asylum claim. In addition to Achube's scenarios, students and teachers may exclude, name call, or even be physically violent to refugee students, which can make refugee students in turn feel unsafe or isolated. Now I'm going to talk to you about lack of teacher quality and training. Teachers who are not knowledgeable on certain races or religions may have issues connecting with students who are unaware of their different needs and cultures. McBride, in her review of the refugee students' educational needs and barriers for refugee students in the United States, found a disconnect in the school's involvement among U.S. school personnel and refugee parents and students. For example, this disconnect can be found in language barriers. Ra, in Building Bridges Between Refugee Parents and Schools, stated that school practitioners viewed communication with parents and students recently arrived from other countries as particularly complicated due to literacy in English and their home country's language. Thus, communication in the forms of text such as letters, memos, newsletters, and emails, arguably the prime means of communication between schools and parents, is rendered ineffective. As a consequence, the workload for translators and interpreters is intensified, and it makes contacting via phone and in person more complicated. Not only does it require finding individuals who are bilingual in the refugees' language, but it comes to a greater cost to the schools and the district. While teachers struggle to provide for their students, refugee families struggle to provide for themselves, which brings me to my third point for lack of resources. According to the report in News and Features from the National Education Association, in addition, because refugee families struggle to provide even the most basic needs for themselves, that work rather than school take priority for children. Many of these families also simply are not aware of their right to an education or do not have access to information on how to enroll in their children in school. Refugee students come to the United States with little to no belongings. Before getting established in the United States, many refugees live in poverty and cannot afford materials for class such as paper and pencils. One of the largest issues for refugees in the classroom is access to a computer or internet. Many teachers are not prepared for or aware of this lack of materials and often cannot provide themselves, which lead refugees to fall behind. Oftentimes, refugees do not have transportation to school or outside resources like the library, which also put them behind in school. In conclusion, refugees are fleeing horrible conditions, including war, religious persecution, and violence. Many of those coming to the United States are children which enroll in the public school system. However, in the public school system, these children face challenges such as discrimination and xenophobia, lack of teacher training, and lack of resources. As a future educator, I want to make sure every student succeeds and feels welcomed in my classroom. By being aware of these issues refugee faces, I can be more aware of this and to create a better environment for them. I hope that the audience has learned something today about refugees and how to encounter them and understand their struggles. Thank you.